So today I have pulled out my entire collection to show you all the dramatic differences that Willow has given us over the years and why Generation 3.0 pump is not the same as its previous versions. And honestly, if you're going to be purchasing a Willow pump from the date of this video on, you need to buy the Clyde warranty and the extended warranties offered because you're going to need it. This company has proven time and time again that they really are not here for the consumer. And as I show you the differences in all these different versions, you'll see what I mean. Just as a treat to us all, because let's just take a moment and revel in the 1.0. This one has the clips. Obviously, I've already started the opening process, and then you have the Generation 2. You look at these, they are very sturdy. The internals, there's nothing here that screams a huge difference. And honestly, the 1.0 was a huge workhorse. You could beat this thing to death and it would still be kicking. The Gen 2 is a much more refined version, but both are great powerhouse pumps. We're going to be talking about the 3.0 though. This is the original 3.0 that was released. It has been out for quite some time. Willow can't actually manage to kick out a better version right now. They're trying, but we'll see how that goes. The shells, honestly, other than the age of the color, you would think they look the same, right? However, the 3.0, even compared to Generation 2, has way more give. There is a lot more flexibility and movement to the original Gen 3 compared to the Gen 2. When you're talking original 3.0 to current 3.0, it's a big difference. This one is much more flexible, gives way more give, and honestly, it already makes creaking and little snapping noises that make you nervous that it'll break it in half compared to this one. So, just opening up with that. These housings, even the base, when we strip all this down to the bare minimum, these housings are extremely flexible, way more than the original generations. And that's why when the 3.0 came out, we saw way more stress fractures in these arms where the magnets are, even across, than we did in any pump prior. Now, another thing that has happened from Gen 2 to today's 3.0 is firmware. They have changed firmware so many times, it's not even funny. The original Gen 1 and Gen 2 firmware operated to where majority of moms actually could respond and did better with it. They then slowed everything down, made things very uneven. In between Gen 2 and the original Gen 3, they changed firmware and pattern again. Jessica has amazing guides over that and comparisons. I can link those below. Huge firmware changes, and honestly, a lot of moms have struggled more responding to the 3.0 patterns because they are just so different. What does that mean? That means if you were a Generation 1 or 2 Willow user, you need a lot of time in between starting to even attempt adjusting to a 3.0. Speaking from experience and seeing this with plenty of other moms, if you don't have enough time in between Generation 2 and Generation 3, you're probably not going to adjust to it. It's probably not going to empty you and work for you. We've even noticed between the original 3.0 users and the current that honestly time in between the versions is critical because of the changes that they've continued to make to the 3.0 that actually don't help moms, they hurt them. These are things to keep in mind. None of these pumps function the same as you would expect. The Gen 2 and Gen 1 were original firmware that was identical. However, if you were ever a Gen 2 user, you know that Willow kicked out an update that changed the firmware of the Gen 2 and essentially mass murdered majority of moms' pumps and therefore a lot of people's journeys. Honestly, the only reason my pumping journey did not end during the Gen 2 update was because I was barely in warranty, and I mean barely by like a few weeks. If you were one of the moms that got scorned by that, terribly sorry. I've been where you at. I know what's going on. But yeah, at that point, after everybody had their pumps die from the app with the Gen 2, when Gen 3 came out, majority of us never touched the app. Would not do it. Didn't want to lose our pumps, right? The thing about it is the firmware that updated in the Gen 2 is still not the same as the firmware in the Gen 3. And between this Gen 3 and this one, there have been multiple firmware changes in between. Just something to keep in mind, these are changes that the companies are making to your pumps without you even knowing about it. It is literally telling you that they're updating for better battery life, or for the fancy new controls in the app, or an Apple Watch update. But reality is they're changing these pumps and the way they function every single time. Going into the actual pumps, so the mechanics of what is in your house. This original 3.0 does not match this 3.0, and you might be able to tell, but this motor is extremely shiny. This one's very dull. If we look at the 1.0, it's dull. They maintain this motor all the way through these generations, and now with the new one, we've gotten cheaper, weaker motor that does not perform the same. Let me give you a close-up what we're looking at. So you can already tell this one's very dull. It's got a brown plastic end. This one's black, very shiny. All of these have identifiers on the top. This one does not. Just another little view. Ignore the battery. This has been a pump for science for multiple years. Everything else at the eye pretty much matches. This motor is still the same. One change. Okay, it's not a big deal. Except for this one is the main functioning motor. Let me see. When you get your flex tube, you put them in. This is your pressure foot. This is the one that actually comes out and it applies the pressure to the bottom of the flex tube, creating a seal. That way, this can then manipulate and create the essential pulsating feeling that you're feeling in the suction to help trigger those letdowns and get your body to respond. But this right here has to be strong enough to hold that flex tube and know when to release and how to come back to basically control all the suction in your pump. So when this motor fails, the entire pump fails. There's no coming back from it. When a mom had all the things going wrong for example, a bad bra fit, bad flange sizing, all these things, this motor could still take a beating. I could roughly give you a 6-month time frame, like, hey, within 6 months, I would expect to see this motor fail. I don't even think you can get 3 months. I don't know that I have seen a 3-month stretch on this motor if everything else is going wrong. Now, if everything is going right, this motor shouldn't fail. If everything is going right, this should not fail until it is just old. And by old, I mean well beyond a year with heavy use. This one, you're maybe making 3 months. Maybe 4. But honestly, my team that I know can be verified on everything, they're not making it 3 months on this new motor. That's a problem. We're already facing firmware issues and flexibility issues, which I'm going to tie in a minute. But now you're up against, you bought this pump, they sent you this one as a replacement. Then you're wondering, well, why am I not responding to this pump? That brings in the flex tubes. Any Willow user knows that these are the heart and soul of your pump. If this is going bad, then nothing else is going to work. This is a 2019 flex tube that I got with my Gen 2. It is extremely firm. Even all these years later, it is extremely firm. It honestly is my favorite, but it was not as clear, and overall, it worked better. They've held up. Even the glue for the plastic parts have always held up better than anything we've seen since. So, original flex tube. This is a 2021 flex tube. This is what I got with the original 3.0. As you can tell, it's super flexible. These are much thinner. They do not hold the same type of resistance. And honestly, the glue in these is very terrible. We were seeing failures of these well before 90 days, even with limited use. And that means Willow had to replace them. quite a bit, which enters the 2022-2023 flex tube, and they tried going back to their similar. It's still not the same. I still have to apply way more pressure to the Gen 2. They're trying, right? They're trying to get back to a similar design. Still the same glue issues. This one is already starting to try and peel apart. It's been used 3 times and boiled once. So yeah, we're going back to a more firm state compared to this one. Still similar failures, but at the end of the day, they're trying. At least that's what you would think. They're trying to get back to the original flex tube to help you out. Now, why would I say help you out? Any Gen 2 user that either was still using the Gen 2 and needed the new flex tubes, or that had the 3.0 and got the new flex tubes immediately after using a Gen 2, all of us saw an extreme need to readjust, if even possible, because they don't function the same. The flex tubes alone don't function the same. I can put the 2021 flex tube in my Gen 2 and I will not empty with it. I can put the 2019 version flex tube in the 3.0 and I will partially empty, mainly because the firmware and things are different from the Gen 2. But this flex tube, I can make it work. This one, I can't. They've had these flex tubes out for a very long time, years. Now they've changed them. Honestly, if you didn't sit here and truly go through every nook and cranny, you would not know that your flex tubes are different. When you're used to this flimsy little thing and you get this rigid one, that's going to create a huge problem for you. What we've seen is this creates more vibration. Now, the vibration is a problem because this is more flexible. It moves so much more. This arm is weaker. It can't hold the same type of pressure and control the same as it should. So when it comes in and it's trying to manipulate your flex tube that is now more rigid than what the pump was designed for, this whole thing shakes. You get a vibration that most do not care for. It creates a confusing situation for your body where it does not want to let down properly. And at the end of the day, it breaks your pump. It breaks your pump because this is too thin, too flexible, and it cannot hold up against the firmness of your flex tube. A brief synopsis would be, they've changed your firmware. These pumps don't operate the same. I can't put on this pump and respond to it like I can the 1.0 and every generation in between. They are all different. 2, your parts can't be trusted. They go in and they change these parts at a drop of a hat. They never give you a warning. They don't let you know, like, hey, we're selling out of old inventory for new inventory. They don't give you any heads up. You are playing Russian roulette with whatever parts you order. And if you buy a pump and then because of warranty get a brand new one, you can't look at these and expect that this is the same because they've already done it. They have already sat there and changed firmware because the pumps already come updated. They've already changed the internals if they choose, and you're up against the parts. All the way around, Willow has proven time and time again that they're not here for the consumer, and they're not here for your pumping journey. They'll send you these. And unless you're truly looking for it and you're out to compare, you're never the wiser. So then all of a sudden when your supply dips, when you no longer respond, you're out of a pump, you have no money for another pump, what's going to happen? Your breastfeeding journey is going to suffer, if not end completely. Your baby is going to suffer from it. Not because of anything you did, but because the company can't be trusted and can't uphold values. I hope this video helps you understand just a little bit about the risk of these types of pumps. I hope it explains why you see so much variation in moms' journeys, how they feel about a pump. Because honestly, I love the Willow. I was a huge fan of Gen 1 and Gen 2. I got really scorned in between. And you never know what some mom had. She might have had the top. She might have had the 1.0. And it was the best thing ever. And another one may have been dealing with the new 3.0. So just keep in mind when you're trying to compare pumps, you can't trust everyone's journey because everyone is different. Everyone responds differently. What works for them might not work for you. And at the end of the day, we can't trust the pump companies to give you the exact same product. We really don't know Was it a flex tube that ended somebody's journey? Was it weaker housing? Was it a motor change? Or was it firmware? Just things to keep in mind. Always make sure you have a warranty. That is one of the risks for buying used pumps, especially these newer generation used pumps. They don't last. They don't hold up. And those internals, once they're gone, I can't help you fix them. I can't tell you where to go buy another one that's equivalent or not going to mess up the pump. Because at the end of the day, that's been created for a reason, and they don't want us fixing these pumps. So be safe when you're purchasing. Keep these things in mind. And if you're receiving troubleshooting help in our group, which I will also link down below, just remember that when we're asking you 9 million questions over the Willow pump to troubleshoot, there's a method to the madness. We're having to combat all of these issues and figure out which one it is that's the problem. Hope this video helps just kind of prepare you for the 3.0 and educate you on what you need to do to make sure that it works for your pumping journey. Definitely stay tuned because unfortunately, Willow also has another pump out, the Willow Go, and it's worse. So the Willow Go video is coming out next week, and yeah, it's a doozy. They made this one worse, and of course, just full circle, anyone that has been around for a really long time knows that Willow originally came out as an all-woman brand, and yay! They're not like that at all, and funnily enough, they think women aren't smart enough to figure this out, so I've got a few years of history with them. It's kind of nice to see it come full circle and be able to provide y'all a final video just proving how terrible they have chosen to be over the last few years. They have a lot of things to make up for and amends to make for moms and consumers because they've really done a doozy. You definitely want to stick around for the Willow Go video because it doesn't really go and you're going to need to know about it. See you on the next one.